Cup Championship. The cars took onto the circuit, the Snetterton 300 circuit that we're on earlier on this morning for qualifying, and this grid, the first of three that they've got this weekend, is based on the fastest times that were set in the qualifying session earlier on today, albeit there's a couple of cars towards the tail end of the field that have been given grid drops because of failure to comply with yellow flag signals at a previous round, which would have been at Donington Park, no doubt. So it is the man who is already crowned the 2024 champion, Lewis Clark, that's going to be lining up on pole position. He is the 2024 champion. He was the 2023 champion. He's the only man so far since Focus Cup first started out in 2019 to have successfully defended his championship crown. And as a result of becoming the champion for this year, he has got the fantastic prize of being able to drive one of those test cars that sit at the back of the grid. You can see the red one there on the right-hand side of the screen. The white one on the left-hand side of the screen is Simon Walton's car, the man behind the championship. These are the new cars that are going to be introduced into the championship next year. So whilst historically it's always been a 2-litre TDCi diesel-engined car, the cars at the back of the grid are the Ford Focus ST Mark 3.5s, a 2-litre petrol-engine car, and they're producing around about 300 brake horsepower compared to the 275 that the diesels have been producing. So it will be a split class for next year, and Lewis Clark, as a result of claiming the championship for this year, will be driving one of those next year. We're expecting probably half a dozen of them on the grid, talking to Simon, and those two cars at the back of the grid are likely to work their way through the order. They qualified right towards the sharp end, but because they are almost testing these cars in a race environment, which is absolutely the best way to do it, they start at the back of the grid. They will work their way through the order. They're the more powerful cars, but odds are they will probably call into the pits again when they start to get towards the front of the pack, so they don't interrupt what is the championship battles that are still going on. So off they head on their formation lap, weaving from side to side to try and build some temperature into control Nankang tyres that all of these cars run. All of the cars are prepared centrally as well by Simon Walton's Ford Focus Cup team. So it really is very much an arrive and drive package. You pay your money for the weekend, you get testing thrown in, you get basic hospitality thrown in, you get the car with the fuel and all the consumables thrown in as well for a set fee over the weekend. It's a very, very affordable way of going racing. So as the cars head around the circuit, we should be able to confirm the way that they will line up. It is Lewis Clark that sits there on pole position, and alongside him is John Baker, the man who lies second in the championship. Row 2 of the grid is Alistair Topley and Thomas Brown, and row 3 of the grid on the inside, it is Ian Howard that lines up alongside Craig Ballantyne. Row 4 of the grid, Craig Appleton has Simon Watts for company, a man who's been around this championship since the very beginning, Simon Watts. And row 5 of the grid, it is Richard Hall and Simon Langford that sit there on row number 5. Row 6 of the grid is Ainsley Bird, and nice to see Bryony Davis out having her first outing in the Focus Cup, with row 7 being Adam Winter and Cameron Gerardo Mack that is next up. The 8th row of the grid sees Abby Walton, who was 10th in the championship last year, line up alongside Sarah Hall, hoping for better things. She's had a difficult year this year. Row 9 of the grid is the car of Mark McCann, and then Simon Waugh out of position. He is the man who was 3rd in the championship last year, but only 18th with that grid drop that he picked up. He is there on row number 9. And row 10 is the last final full row of the grid. It is Ian Graham that lines up alongside Simon Walton, driving one of those development cars. And on the back of the grid is the second development car in the hands of Gary Mitchell. So that's the way that they line up. Gary is a double former runner-up in this championship, if memory serves me correctly. So beautiful conditions here. It might feel slightly chilly out there. In the sunshine, it's lovely. You drop into the shade and you can really feel it. There's a slight autumnal chill in the air, but beautiful dry track conditions. The cooler air will certainly help the cars as well. That cooler air that they'll be ingesting will certainly just mean that the cars and the tyres should be able to perform beautifully well. So Lewis Clark, it's pressure off for him really. He's already stitched up the championship. He's already taken 5 pole positions so far this season, including the one that he took earlier on this morning, and he has converted those pole positions to race wins at Donington Park. He claimed both of the race wins at Donington Park, having qualified on pole, and he set the fastest lap as well in both of the races. So it was a clean sweep of points for him in the opening round at Donington Park. He did exactly the same at Brands Hatch, and he did exactly the same, apart from missing out on one fastest lap, a few points at Alton Park. Then he didn't win any of the races at Silverstone or at Croft, but was back to winning ways last time out at Donington Park. So he really has had a mega season. So he comes into this weekend on 550 points. You can add another 30 to that, because you get 30 points if you qualify on pole position, which is the same amount as you get for a race win. So it's 30 for a race win, 26 for second, 23rd for third, and so on. It diminishes from there. The same points are allocated for qualifying. If you're fastest, it's 30, then it's 26 and 23. 5 points for fastest lap in each one of the races. So there's still plenty of points up for grabs. But for Lewis Clark, he is already away and safe for this year, so he can sort of relax really for the first time and not have to worry about any championship pressures as such. So his black and pink and blue car starting from pole position, twice a race winner so far this year. The number 10 car of John Baker lines up alongside. He was 4th in the championship last year and the year before. He was 7th in 2021, and then row 2 of the grid, it's the yellow and black car of Alistair Topley. You can just see the number 41 car there behind the pole sitter, sitting alongside Thomas Brown, 2 drivers that are new to the championship, I think, for this weekend. So we've got the final few rows of the grid coming into position. This is a 15-minute race, the first of 3 that we'll have for these Focus Cup Championship cars here today at Snetterton. So with the last row of the grid just coming into position now, Simon Waugh comes up to his mark. And then I think the 2 development cars might be starting potentially from the pit lane of Simon Walton and Gary Mitchell. So green flag flies at the back of the field. 5-second board is held aloft. The red lights will come on the gantry and we'll get round 13 of the 2024 Focus Cup Championship underway here at Snetterton. Red lights are on, and when the red lights go out now, the cars all try and utilise that best part of 250 pounds-feet of torque to haul the diesel engine cars off the grid. It looks as though it's a good start from Lewis Clark, the pole sitter. Can John Baker slot in into 2nd place? I think he can. Alistair Topley is going to be there in 3rd place. Thomas Brown slots himself into 5th place with Craig Ballantyne leading the top 6. Certainly the front part of the pack are all safely through Ritchie's corner as they head onto the brakes and round through the Wilson hairpin for the first time. Looks as though Thomas Brown there was seeing whether he could work his way around the outside of somebody. There goes Adam Winter. He is wheel to wheel with Bryony Davis and is trying to draw himself alongside the car as well alongside him, which is going to be Cameron Ferrando Mack, I think that possibly was. So they work their way through the left-hander at Palmer for the first time. Speeds begin to build as they head down the short straight that brings them up towards the braking area for Agostini, but you can already see 8 times a race winner Lewis Clark is already just starting to pull away a little bit from John Baker. Watch out for the 2 cars of Simon Walton and Gary Mitchell, the petrol engine Mark 3.5 cars that will form part of this championship next year. They'll be working their way from the tail end of the order up through the pack, but it is already 3-4 car lengths between Lewis Clark and John Baker, who can't shake away Alistair Topley in the early stages of this one. Ian Howard looking as though he might possibly lose a place there, as I think that was Craig Ballantyne that was trying to go around the outside. Yep, and then also sneaking through is Craig Appleton there, who manages to get up the inside of Simon Watts, and Simon Watts is going to lose a further place there to Simon Langford, the number 11 car, managing to sneak through, but they'll run side by side further down through the pack, down the Bentley Straight. The race leaders, though, in single file, head up towards Brundle and Nelson for the first time. So onto the brakes, in towards the tricky left-hand braking area for Brundle, and then get the car anchored up for Nelson. Look at the squabble that's going on further back. Simon Watts trying to make sure he can fend away Richard Hall, who almost is pushed out wide and onto the curbs there, and then has to move across on Simon Langford to prevent the number 11 car squeezing its way through. But Simon Langford has other ideas and knocks into the side very, very briefly of Richard Hall there. Just light contact between the pair. They'll both continue, but that has compromised both of those cars around through that section. So in towards the braking area for Murray's for the first time. Ian Howard has dropped down through the order a little bit. He qualified 5th quickest at the wheel of the number 37 car, but he's going to come over the start-finish line, I think, a couple of places further back from that, as the first lap is chalked into the book. And it is our double champion, Lewis Clark, that leads the way, but not by much, to be fair. John Baker has just over the start-finish huge amounts of experience in this championship. He has made very good progress, Simon Waugh. He's up 4 places, started 18th. He comes through in 14th place in the number 22 at the end of the first lap. Say Simon knows these cars well. I first saw him in the 2020 edition of this championship. I don't think he did the first year, but he was 4th in 2020. He finished 3rd last year. To say he is out of position really, because he was given a grid drop with 3 drivers further down the grid than where they had qualified. So up towards Agostini. Lewis Clark from John Baker, Alistair Topley, and then the car of Thomas Brown. The front four have just broken away from the car that's there in 5th place, which is going to be Craig Ballantyne's car, I think, that's there in 5th place. Or is it? No, it's not. He is now wheel to wheel with Ian Howard. I just spotted in shot there. So the top four have broken away. Up towards Oggies they'll go. John Baker hanging on to 2nd, despite the fact he's got Alistair Topley in the Power Max car right behind him. Love the fact that all of these cars are liveried as per the many supporters and sponsors and suppliers of this championship. A little bit of bodywork damage there, isn't there? Just hanging off the number 37 car, just one of the sill panels dropping down on Ian Howard's car. Hopefully that's not a cause for concern and won't bring about a black and orange flag for him, a mechanical warning flag. So the top four have really broken away, haven't they? You can see there that little bit of trim panel just hanging down on the number 37 car of Ian Howard, who is still under big pressure from Craig Ballantyne. And then we get this next little squabble coming up, which is Richard Hall right on the coattails of the Black and Dayglow car. That will be Craig Appleton. He's trying to get the undercut and get the inside line, and then we might be 3 wide if we're not careful here. So through goes Richard Hall. Place loss for Craig Appleton, and then Simon Langford is trying to get in on the fun as well. And then just off the back of those is going to be the next of the cars as well, which is going to be the number 64 car. I think that'll be Mark McCann, another driver that's made brilliant progress in the early stages. He was up 6 places from where he qualified. In fact, make that 7 because there's a slight mistake there. Craig Appleton ran wide coming out of Murray's. He's picked off by one car. He's picked off by Ian Graham, another car that was given a good run. Graham was originally scheduled to be driving a different colour car. He's dropped into one of the spare cars after, I think, a problem in qualifying for him. But the top four still together, still in the same order, with Lewis Clark leading John Baker, Alistair Topley trying to fend away the aspirations of Tom Brown, who's looking for the inside line heading up towards Palmer, but isn't quite close enough to try and wiggle his way through there. So we've already had the first third of the race, 2 laps completed, top four well and truly up the road. The gap from 4th back to 5th is 6.4 seconds, so you can really see how much this lead quartet have pulled away from the car in 5th position, which by the look of things is still going the way of Ian Howard at the moment. A spin for Alistair Topley from 3rd place down at Agostini, rotates the car, needs to get it fired back up again. He's dropped to 4th, and can he get the car fired back up? Well, he's struggling, but by the time he gets it fired up, he's going to lose further places. So it's now 2 for the lead, really. And Thomas Brown in 3rd place was slightly delayed by that rotating car of Alistair Brown ahead of him. So the front 2 have managed to escape the grasp of those behind. Thomas Brown on his own in 3rd, and what of the squabble for 4th place? It is Ian Howard who is there in 4th place. Craig Ballantyne is there in 5th place, and the recovering Alistair Topley has dropped further down through the order because Simon Watts has also gone through and ahead of him. So at best he's going to be, I think, in 8th place, Alistair Topley. So down the Bentley straight. Certainly looks as though Ian Howard still has his nose ahead. Craig Ballantyne here, I think, might just hang on to his position at the wheel of the K&N car. Yeah, then it's Simon Watts, followed then by, is that the number 62 thereafter? Can't quite tell. And, oh, I'm afraid Simon Waugh's out. That's such a shame for Simon Waugh. The car was going beautifully well. He made good progress, having started 18th on the grid. But it's all going to come to not a great deal, I'm afraid, as he has dropped down through the order. And he's not the only car to have dropped down through the order. Thomas Brown's dropped down this time through as well. So we're almost at the halfway point of this race. Gary Mitchell and Simon Walton in the petrol engine car starting to make a bit of progress through the order, but some fantastic battles going out on circuit. Richard Hall desperate to try and keep behind him the recovering Power Max car of Alistair Topley. So over the start-finish line have come the leading train. Where's Alistair Topley at the end of that lap? Well, he's lost 4 places. He was 3rd. I'm afraid he's now down into 7th place and is trying to recover, but everybody else you can see is all nose to tail. There goes Simon Walton at the wheel of the number 20 car. That's one of the 2 Mark 3.5 petrol engine machines we've got in the field as they head down towards Wilson, where there'll be no overtaking at this stage. Localised yellow flags there because of the position of Simon Waugh's car, having retired it on the run towards Palmer on the right-hand side. So just localised yellows for a lap until all of the drivers have been past that point, and then they'll know exactly where that car is. And then yellow flags will be withdrawn, and that presents another overtaking opportunity then into the water. Wilson. 6.5 minutes remaining. The lead train of cars midway round what will be lap number 4 this time through. Lewis Clark having led every lap so far, having qualified on pole position. John Baker still there in second position. And you can see the huge train of cars that we've got heading round through Hamilton. And that is going to be Ian Howard, who is feeling the pressure from what would be Craig Ballantyne, I would have thought, behind him. Yeah, then it's Simon Watts in the number 23 car. Then there's a slight gap back from Simon Watts to what was Richard Hall, but Richard Hall was under pressure from Alistair Topley. Has Alistair made it through? Couldn't quite tell by the time they disappeared out of our view whether Alistair Topley has picked up another place there. He's certainly pushing hard to try and recover, having spun out of the podium places. But down towards the braking area for Brundle and Nelson yet again now come. Ian Howard, Craig Ballantyne under pressure, but is still in the K&N car, going to hang on to 4th place. Simon Watts in 5th position. Alistair Topley is still in 7th actually. He's still got the number 99 car of Richard Hall ahead of him, so he's not been able to pick him off just as yet. So this is a good little fight for what is the final podium spot actually, 3rd backwards. One great big train of cars. So Ian Howard qualified 5th quickest. Alistair Topley in the 2nd of the 2 Power Max cars, closes right onto the coattails of the number 99 car, the Liquid Molly car of Richard Hall, and I'm afraid we've lost another one. That's Craig Appleton that's off. That's through Brundle and Nelson, where I would imagine he's lost the tail end of the car going through Brundle, the left-hander, and it's rotated round on him, and he might have made light contact with the barriers there, looking at the position of the car. Hopefully not too much damage, should be able to get going again. If not, then he's out for this race, and the team will go to work to repair it for race number 2, which comes at around about 20 to 3 this afternoon. So through Ritchie's corner, overtaking now a possibility again in towards the Wilson hairpin. Craig Ballantyne gets as close as he can to Ian Hall, but can't unlock the door. Needs to be careful that he can keep Simon Watts behind. And another one of the overtaking opportunities now also not available, because Craig Appleton is out of the number 5 car, and I'm afraid into retirement down at Brundle and Nelson. So through Palmer, 3rd, 4th, 5th all together. Watch out for the number 11 car of Simon Langford. He is trying to make a little bit of progress at the wheel of the AST suspension car, and he has got right behind him Simon Walton in one of the Mark 3.5 petrol engine machines. All looks rather tight heading up in towards Agostini actually. So 3rd, 4th and 5th still together. Now, has Craig Ballantyne got an overlap here on Ian Howard? No, he's still behind him as they head through the left-hander at Hamilton. So no opportunities yet to get himself up onto the podium spots. Almost ran a little bit wide there coming out of Hamilton corner, which is very easy to do. Get on the brakes at Oggies, concentrate on a good exit coming out of Oggies, and even more so, a good exit coming out of this corner here, the right-hander at Wilson, because you carry then all of that speed along the Bentley Straight. Just surprised Alistair Topley hasn't made the kind of progress I would have thought after his spin. Took him a while to get the car fired back up again, but he's not made any progress at all since that spin. So here we go, in towards Brundle and Nelson. Lead to a long, long way up the road now, best part of 12 seconds up the road from this fantastic battle for 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th all together through Brundle and Nelson, but it's still Ian Howard that's hanging on only just to the final podium spot at the moment, despite the fact that the pressure is building behind him. More and more cars joining the queue all of the time. Simon Walton in the number 20 test car starting to work his way through, and Alistair Topley's finally going to gain a place, is he? He's managed to work his way alongside Richard Hall, inside line for Coram, but that's going to be the outside line when they get towards Murray. So Alistair Topley's going to have to brave it all the way around the outside of Richard Hall. There's light touch between the pair of them. There's still more contact between the pair of them as they come out of the corner. That means that Simon Walton in the petrol-engined number 20 test car, the ABS liveried car, has to get on the brakes. And we're almost overlapping for 3rd and 4th as well, because again, Ian Howard is feeling the pressure a little bit. Craig Ballantyne's going to try, is he round the outside at Ritchie's? That's a brave move. Hopefully they give each other racing room, and yes they do. Good driving from both. Somebody in the background running wide, which I think might be Richard Hall, but onto the brakes up towards Wilson. Ian Howard still has the inside line. Craig Ballantyne now needs to cover off any attack that comes from behind, which is Simon Watts, the man who was 6th in the championship, not just last year but the year before as well. Simon's 4th in the championship standings at the moment. Lewis Clark still out front and leading the way from John Baker. He's now 4 seconds to the good Lewis Clark from John Baker. John Baker is 15 seconds ahead of this little queue of cars, which is still being headed by Ian Howard with a minute and a half to go. Well beyond to their penultimate lap of the race this time through. It depends where Lewis Clark is on circuit. Well, running very, very, very wide is Craig Ballantyne all over the grass on the exit of Agostini. Rejoins the circuit and actually doesn't lose a place as a result of that. So he kept his foot in whilst he was on the grass. Good job it's dry here at Snetterton this weekend. And still hangs on to fourth position. Simon Watts could not capitalise on that mistake there. So Ian Howard, Craig Ballantyne, Simon Watts. Then it's going to be Simon Walton. After Simon Walton then is going to be the next of the cars that's trying to work its way through. In a straight line, Simon Walton in the petrol engine machine may well have the upper hand and might be able to pick off one or two. But as I say, the Mark 3.5 being developed for next year, Simon doesn't really want to get involved in the championship battle. And you can see in a straight line, yeah, that petrol engine car has now overtaken those ahead and has moved up into third place overall. The extra grunt in a straight line, the 300 brake horsepower compared to the 175 brake horsepower of the diesel engine machines, means that Simon Walton moves through. But usually what Simon would do is tend not to take the checkered flag. He's not going to be scoring championship points, so even though he's gone through and ahead of others, he won't be taking any championship points away from them in reality, because he will be non-championship scoring for this weekend, as he has been all season whilst he develops these cars in the racing environment. So Lewis Clark got over the start-finish line, still with time on the clock. So now we're going on to the final lap of the race this time through, and the two Powermax cars have now got themselves together. Simon Watts and Alastair Topley together heading down the straight. So through goes Simon Walton in third. Here comes Ian Howard in fourth place. Fifth place is Craig Ballantyne. Then it's going to be Simon Watts from Alastair Topley, followed by then Mark McCann, another driver who's made really good progress from 17th position on the grid up to now 8th place. So that's 9 places he's gained since the start of the race. And side by side, Alastair Topley and Mark McCann through the Wilson hairpin. Alastair Topley is a bit slower out of the exit of the corner, but he's made sure he's protected that all-important inside line up towards Palmer. So Mark McCann is either going to have to go around the outside at Palmer or tuck back behind, and he opts for the latter, tucks back behind again. Forever conscious that should he try something and it doesn't work, that Richard Hall is poised and ready to pounce. And then also the number 11 car of Simon Langford is at the tail end of this little squabble. So again, up towards the braking area for Agostini. Craig Ballantyne still trying to keep the number 23 car of Simon Watts behind, which is just allowing this car here, Ian Howard, to escape a little bit up the road. So he lies in, remember, 4th position now. Onto the brakes, through the right-hander at Oggies. That little trim panel on the sill has been dragging since the very beginning of the race. Hasn't got any worse at all, so the officials have left him alone for the moment. And clearly are not concerned that it's going to fall off, so it's still attached at the front end. It's not been flapping around at all, so yeah, I think it's just a little bit of light damage that the officials are clearly happy with, that they can leave that car out there, and that's good news for Ian Howard, because he would pick up the championship points for 3rd place, because of course it's a petrol engine car that is ahead of him, and I'm afraid there's another car that we've lost as well. So that's another car into retirement. That's Thomas Brown, who has gone missing. But for Lewis Clark, he's about to scoop up what for him will be win number 9 of the 2024 championship season. He is already the champion, and he has made it another lights to flag victory in this one. Has he got the fastest lap of the race? I think he has as well, of the diesel engine cars, but he comes through to claim top honours, win number 9 in round 13 of the 2024 Focus Cup Championship. John Baker comes through to finish in 2nd position, the man who lies 2nd in the championship standings. Simon Walton in the petrol engine development car for next year will take 3rd place, but will not pick up any championship points as a result of that. So the championship points for 3rd are going to go the way of Ian Howard, who has had a busy old race really, fending off everybody that's been charging behind him. But Ian Howard comes through to finish 4th on the road, just ahead of Craig Ballantyne, who finishes in 5th place. Simon Watts in 6th place. Alastair Topley never really recovered, did he, after the spin? He's there in 7th. Mark McCann, a good drive from him from a lowly grid position to finish in 8th place. 9th place will be Richard Hall, and wrapping up the top 10 will be car number 25, the other one of the 2-litre ST Mark 3.5s that we've got in the field, the second of the development cars, which will be the car of Gary Mitchell. But for Lewis Clark, that is the perfect start to today, the first of 3 races for him. He claims the win. He's sick of all of the diesel-engined cars is not actually going to be the best of them, is it? Let's have a quick look through. Yes, it is. Yeah, that's the fastest lap of the diesel engine cars. So that should net him an extra 5 championship points, and at the moment he is on course to do what he's done a couple of times throughout the course of this year, which is pole position, wins and fastest laps in as many of the races as he can, even though the championship pressure is off. So the perfect start to the weekend for him. And there's, I think, another couple of cars just to take the checkered flag, and then we can confirm the results for you. But looks as though the drivers that are first and second in the championship standings are going to be first and second in our first of 3 races that we've got here for you today at Snetterton. Lewis Clark from John Baker. And for John Baker, that doesn't as yet confirm him as the runner-up in the championship, but it moves him a step closer towards it, because the driver that was third in the standings coming into this weekend, Ian Mitchell, is not competing. And Simon Watts, who is fourth in the championship standings, finished down in 6th position, so he was outscored in qualifying by John Baker and outscored in the race by John Baker. So still a good number of points up for grabs, but that is a good start to the day for John Baker to try and cement a runners-up spot for him in the championship, which would be his best championship position if he could manage that, because he was 4th over the course of the last couple of seasons. So Lewis Clark waving to the marshal in 2nd place, and it was Simon Walton who was there in the development car in 3rd place. Ian Howard was 4th, just ahead of Craig Ballantyne and Simon Watts, who completed the top 6. Alistair Topley was running 3rd, but had a spin and dropped down into 7th place. And Mark McCann made good progress to finish in 8th place from 19th on the grid. Then it was Richard Hall who was there in 9th place, and completing the top 10 was the second of the test cars being introduced into the championship for next year, which was Gary Mitchell. Then in 11th place, it was a number 27 car which finished in 11th position, which was Ian Graham, another car off the tail end of the field. Simon Langford was next up, ahead of Adam Winter and Bryony Davis, with the top 15 being completed by car number 57, which is the car of Ashley Bird. Then it was Abby Walton ahead of then the next of the cars, which is going to be Cameron Ferrado Mack, with Sarah Hall in 18th place. 19th place was the number 28 car, which was Thomas Brown. He had his problems and did retire a little bit late on with a lap to go. And another car that we lost out there on circuit, of course, was the number 5 car of Craig Appleton. And then the other car, which was the first of those to retire, was the unfortunate Simon Waugh, who is going to have to charge his way through the order for the second of our 2 Focus Cup races that's coming up for you later on today at Snetterton. So that was round 13 of the championship. We'll be back with you for round 14 of the championship, the second of our 3 races today, and that's scheduled to take place, subject to timetable changes here at Snetterton, around about 20 to 3 this afternoon. So thanks for joining us for the first of 3 races. We'll see you later on today. Goodbye.